start the recording. And today we've got Sarah D'Angelantonio as a guest presenter, and I'll get to that in a second. Just a reminder first to complete that survey that Chris sent out about tools. I'm sure many of you have done it already, but if you haven't had a chance to yet, please send that out, because that will help us inform the topics for future meetings. Speaking of future meetings, on October 2nd and October 9th, we're going to have two speakers, and they're going to be speaking on vastly different topics. So we hope you find those interesting. And then after that, on the October 16th, we'll resume with presentations, and those will be informed by your responses to the survey that Chris sent out. But today, we are going to have our Executive Dean of Assessment and Academic Affairs. I had to write that down, so I made sure I got it right. But everybody knows her as a brilliant English professor, Thomas Hardy Scholar. Sarah D., the infamous Sarah D., she's going to present on an annotation tool called Hypothes.is. So take it away, Sarah.
All right. Thanks so much, Paul, and thank all of you for showing up at 4 o'clock on a Friday. I'm not sure if your ideal time is better than ours, which was like, was it 7 a.m. or 8 a.m.?
7:45 a.m.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that yours is much better than ours was. So I'm going to share my screen with you and walk through a presentation on the basics of Hypothes, a tool that I'm using. If the Peabody Library, Katie Beth, is at Johns Hopkins, then yes, that's the library it is. Also, I think you'll find posted in the chat right now a link to a Hypothes group. And if you've already loaded up Hypothes on your machine, when we get to this part, you can make use of that. If you haven't, don't worry, there'll be plenty of things to look at. So I'm going to share my screen and get us going. There we go. All right, so Hypothes. Hypothes picks up with something that's been going on in writing for a really long time, and that's marginalia, annotations to text. And so that picture on the left is from a medieval text. That's actually an owl, and that's what that word bubo stands for. This is one of the tamer pieces of marginalia that I can share with you from medieval texts. So people have been writing in the margins for a really long time. Contemporary poet, former US Poet Laureate Billy Collins has written a really nice poem about marginalia and about the way that people interact with text. I don't know about you, but I usually read with a pencil or pen in hand. It doesn't seem to matter what I'm reading. I can't help but mark things up. And so Hypothes takes that idea and brings it into a digital format. So Hypothes is an open source software that uses annotation over the entire web. It will allow you and your students to do sentence level note taking or critique on top of classroom readings, news, blogs, scientific articles, books, ballot initiatives, legislations, and more. Pretty much anything that you can find out on the web can be annotated using Hypothes. So for future reference, where you can find it, this is the URL that will take you to the basic information about it, but you can always just look it up. And how do you get it? And this is useful for you and for your students. Well, you have to sign up for it. It's a free account. It's free to everyone. It's the same version that anyone can get this. It's open source. And all they want from you when you sign up is an email address and a password that you create yourself. They're not looking for lots of information. They respect individual privacy. You then add Hypothesis to your browser as a Chrome extension, or if you're using a different browser, you can do it as add it to your bookmarks bar or make it a bookmarklet or something like that. And once you've added it, it'll show up at the top of your screen, and then you can use it at any point that you wish to annotate an article, and your students can do the same thing. And then once you have the browser extension, you can go to any page on the web. You can open up a PDF, you can open up an EPUB file in your browser, select the text you want to select, and start annotating. You can annotate for your own benefit, or you can also join public conversations with other people out in the world at large who are commenting on articles and materials online. So why might you want it? A number of reasons and some things that you may want to think about. One, it's a way to do writing the margins online, so it's digital writing. And if you are using more digital documents and materials with your students, and given that we're often these days in various remote formats, I think more of us are doing that, then this is one way to continue to do marginal writing online. Annotation has been shown to help students' reading comprehension. So if students are engaging with text as they're reading it, it tends to help them remember it more and to understand it better at a more deep level. It can help them develop their critical thinking about the course materials. It'll allow them to respond to text using different media in new ways, digital ways. And it's a collaborative tool. So you and your students can work collaboratively to start understanding and developing ideas about what it is that you're reading. So some samples about how it's been used for collaboration in the classroom. And this is on Hypothesis site, but one of the nice things I popped up here, I know about 3 people who are using it here from other parts of my life. So Alicia from the University of Pittsburgh Greensburg has been using it with her students to annotate materials online, in particular poetry that she's teaching in one of her classes. And this comes from the Gutenberg Bartleby website now. And you can see that she has her students annotating and commenting in the margins. Here, a faculty member who's got an edX course has his students annotating or working on a Wikipedia page. Here's a PDF from online, and you can see how students can work with that. And at New Mexico State University, grad students are annotating a journal PDF on psychobiotics and the gut-brain axis in the pursuit of happiness. High school students are making use of it. In this case, they're annotating the letter from Birmingham jail, and that came off of a Google Drive document. And more English faculty using it. Robin DeRosa, who'll be speaking with us next month, she's up at Plymouth State University, has students working with her on a open source anthology of American literature. So this is an open source free textbook where she actually is having her students help her in the creation and refinement of that product. And political science students annotating Supreme Court opinions. Freshman seminar, looking at a blog and annotating a blog. Right? And here's another online journal article. So as you can see from these examples, there are lots of different ways that it can be used in all different kinds of classrooms in all different subject areas and fields. So some questions you may have. Can you use it in Canvas? You can. You would need to install it as a LMS app. The Hypothesis folks have a pilot program for educational institutions. I just installed it the other day, but I've been using it without having it integrated in Canvas. When it's integrated in Canvas, it will show up or be used in the module section, not in your assignments, but it'll show up in the module sections and you can have direct links from there. But as I said, you don't have to integrate it with the Canvas app. You can still make use of it in Canvas without the app integration. You can still create assignments in Canvas that connect with the Hypothesis platform. And just so you know, any files that you have uploaded to your Canvas page can be accessed through Hypothesis and annotated. So if you have course-specific materials that you've uploaded as files, then you can have your students start working with those right away to do annotations. So I'm going to share with you here, and this is in Canvas Commons, just so it's easy for me to get to or for you to refer back to. But this is an assignment my students have been working on just this week. Now, in the past, what I've done is we have a book, and they still do, but I've always given them links to the poetry we're reading online. I'd ask them to annotate their books. Sometimes I'd have them turn in materials that would show those annotations, like snap a picture of the page or that sort of thing. But what I did this semester is I linked in my Canvas assignment that you see here to the poems on the Poetry Foundation page. And then I had it set up so that my students, and if you look up here, this is the way Hypothesis looks in the browser. You'll see this little H, and it'll get dark when you've got it linked. But if I open up Hypothesis, and let's see if I'll go into my group. So here you see the class group that I made. So this is our own class, not public, annotations. And I began by sort of seeding the discussion to get them started, and then asked them as part of the class assignment to read the poem so that we could talk about it, but to also add annotations to the poem. And so you can see that a number of my students have gone on in to do that. And the same thing with page notes. And this is what it looks like when you open it up. You'll see over here to the right that this allows you to see the highlights. You can turn those off if you want. And you can put in two different kinds of annotations, sort of straight annotations where you would go over, highlight text. And then you get a box where you can add your comment. You'll notice up here you could do some things with formatting. Some really nice features are you can add links to outside items if you wish. You can add a picture. And you can put tags on it if you want to do that. When you're finished writing what you want to write, you just hit post. And I'll just type in the word here. And it will add it then to the conversation. You can edit it if you want to do that. Other people can respond to it, which is nice to get students conversing with one another. And you can share it out in a variety of ways if you want to do that. So that gives you a sense of how it works on the page. Pop back out. And what I did with this assignment is I attached every one of the poems that we could find online to it so that we could do our annotation that way. Let me get back to the screen I want. There we go. All right. So what would you need to do to prepare your students to use Hypothesis? What I presented my students with is I talked about what it was and why we might want to use it. And then in Canvas, and again, I put this in the Commons, was just a brief description. I was having a little bit of trouble with it in class on that day. So I wanted to make sure they knew what to do after we talked it through. So I just provided a brief explanation, which told them how to join it, that they needed to create an account, add the browser, and then join our collaborative annotation group. You can set up annotation groups in your own Hypothesis platform, and then you can generate a link that you can provide to your students that will allow them to automatically become part of that group. So it's really easy and seamless in that way. I also provided them with a one-page guide which showed them how to start annotating And I also provided them with a web tutorial so that regardless of the mode that they prefer to learn in, they had different ways of accessing information. And I had given them a brief demonstration in class, and then we just sort of jumped in, and I had them start doing annotations pretty much at the beginning of the semester when we started with Beowulf. So what I thought we could do as a group is try it out and do some practice. So I have set up for us, and I put the link for those of you who've already added Hypothesis to your browser. This down here is the link. If you paste that in your browser, it'll take you to our group page. But I'm going to open it up just to show you what's here. And if any of you want to join me, go ahead and join in. So you'll see I added a couple of articles. I saw the nature of subject matter that a number of you teach. So I pulled some articles that I thought might be of interest, just to show you how it interacts with different things on the web. And what you'll see here is the group page. And this is a place where you can sort of monitor what's going on with your particular group. It'll tell you how many annotations that you have. It'll let you know who's in the group. Down here, we've got the members. I see a couple of you have joined. You can see there's a link here that you can provide to allow others to join. So I'll open this up. And see a couple of annotators here. This is sort of the basic screen. It gives you the URL for the document, which is really nice. And then you can visit the annotations in context, which is what we're going to do. So you'll see that simply joining it, it takes us out to the document that's on the web. You'll see up here at the top that my hypothesis button has turned dark, which means it's engaged. And there we go. And when you click on it, it'll open up my bar on the right so that I can start annotating or see what other people have done. So again, I often seed the annotation with questions as a way of sort of having students, as they're reading through an article, maybe answer questions about things that come up or point them to items that I think might be interesting. And here, I just threw in a question, you know, what are either of the author's academic credentials? And then what I did with my response to that is I put in a hyperlink, which takes me out to a little biography about the chemistry professor who's one of the co-authors of the article. So that's the sort of thing that you can do here. You can collapse this if you want to read the article, you know, and then you can see everything on the page, or open it up again if you want to see everything. And to simply do an annotation, just highlight what you want to highlight, click your little quotation marks, it'll open it up and you can start doing an annotation and add to the mix right there. And you'll see that this is part of our group. So I don't know if you want to join in or give it a try for those of you that are here. Is annotation better than note-taking? I think a combination is really good. Note-taking is one way to engage, but what this will allow your students to do is to engage with you while you might be going through the document and with their classmates. And in some ways it extends class discussion onto the page, onto the written page, in a different format. So the more ways you can get students to engage with the text, I think the better.
Sarah, can I ask you a question? This is Melinda.
Yeah, Melinda.
So, in your class, they annotate, let's say, you know, poetry or a poem or something. And then is there like a next stage or a next outcome or somewhere where they're going with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of our course discussion. I want them to annotate the poems before we talk about them in class so that they have something to contribute to the conversation. And then
So this is like a pre-assignment or something?
It can be a pre-assignment. It can also be a post-assignment. If you've read something in class and you want them to go back and think a little bit harder about it or have them attend to a particular section, you could give it as an assignment after reading. So you can roll it out in any number of ways. It's really just a matter of what do you want to do with it, and how do you want your students to engage.
There's a couple things in the chat.
How do I grade annotations? It depends on what I'm asking them to do. Let me see if I can pop out and show you my page. I'm gonna just change the screen that I'm sharing with you for a second. Let's see. It'll just take me a minute to pull the right one up. There we go. So what I'm showing you now is my group page. And depending on what it is, for instance, the poem annotations, I asked everyone to engage at least 2 times in each of the poems. And that engagement could be putting a comment in, putting a question in, or responding to someone else's comment. And what I can see over here is numbers of comments that have been made on different items, and I can see how many comments were made on each one. So I could give a numerical score, or I could simply grade it as complete, incomplete. Typically with this kind of engagement where it's kind of light and it's class preparation, I put that into their daily average and just factor it in as a certain number of points over a total. But again, you can use it or grade it in any way you might want to do that. It's pretty wide open how you use it. But this page, which shows you on your group one, will give you some basic information that you can use that's useful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you'll see, just so you can sort of see what I did by clicking on the individual person, I can get a rundown of how they've engaged with things, or I should be able to do that. So yeah, you can see Addison's comments there. All right, so I'm going to go back out. All right. All right. So my question to you is, how do you think you might be able to use this sort of platform or tool in the classes that you're teaching? What kinds of applications might it have in your own classes, do you think?
In my Beatles course, it would be great for analysis and reaction to lyrics. Sometimes the students are hesitant to speak up themselves, but they might want to use a tool like this. And then I like the respond to each other feature too, respond to each other's comments. I think that could be really useful.
I had a similar thought. In evolutionary psychology, we listen to all kinds of music with lyrics because most of the lyrics that we listen to in our music and that we like a lot have to do with reproductive messages. So love, body parts, babies, mamas, all of that kind of stuff. So I think the lyrics would be really good too. And I'm thinking it would be a good tool to use like in first year seminar or an introductory level course where you're trying to teach students to be better readers. And probably nobody's done that with them before, but try to help them go through and find the right parts or the important parts of the text.
Yeah, what's nice is that you can model some of that with your own annotations and then sort of encourage that activity with them. And then just to sort of comment there, it is a nice way to have some accountability for the reading that's not a quiz, which I like. And it also means I don't have to take class time out for a quiz. And Frank, in terms of dense reading, I found it to be really useful with some of my upper level students when they're engaging with some scholarly texts that are a little bit harder to digest for them. I found it to be really useful. Anyone else have thoughts on how they might use it in class?
I could see myself using it for scholarly text, specifically for undergrads, because I mean, a lot of times when students start to read articles, they see a results section, they see statistics, and their eyes glaze over, they worry, And so it might be an opportunity for multiple students to kind of collaboratively read something rather than just wait for class time to go over it. And then by that point, they've forgotten everything. So
Sorry, I
no worries.
moved my helper off the table. Okay. Any other thoughts about how you might make use of it?
I can't remember if anyone's mentioned this, but if this were an online class discussion, annotate, like, because I remember in some of the online classes I took in library school, you had to do X number of discussion posts per week. And, sometimes it kind of felt like you were talking about things in the abstract, like, hypothetical situations where if you're annotating something everybody's reading, everybody's going to see it. It makes it a little more engaging, I think.
Yeah, I like that it keeps it all in one page, because sometimes in those discussion strands, they're reading something in one place and then doing the discussion in another. And I like having it all in one location. I think it's got some benefits for students who have a hard time switching back and forth between those.
Yeah, well, I mean, a great application is what folks, what they call flipped learning. So let's say you have them read something ahead of time, you want them to discuss it, which I've done a lot of times in the classroom. Having them annotate something before coming in makes it a lot easier to discuss it. And then they can refer to the notes that they took on it as well. There's endless things you could do. In political science, we have journal articles. Like Andrew was saying, we have tables with statistics in it, beta coefficients. You could say, hey, can you guys collectively interpret what this table is saying? And how do we know that these variables are significant? You could ask them questions, have them respond to that. You had Marbury versus Madison up there. Again, classic case law like that, which can be very dense. Have them sort of tear apart, like say, well, what do you think are the most important parts of the legal reasoning in there? If you're guiding them with questions. And I think it's a great way to prepare for class the next day as well. When we do political theory or political philosophy and we have Plato, that stuff gets pretty dense, and I could even point out places, what do you think Socrates means when he says this, or what this character, and lead them with questions. And I think you could put stuff, prompts in there for them to respond to. It's endless. But the thing is just so many ways to engage them. Lots of applications.
Sarah, I have a question. We use the discussion board on Canvas quite a bit. It seems like it does some of what the hypothesis does, but what is it that the hypothesis is doing that's above and beyond the discussion board, would you say?
Well, it's allowing you to have the text in front of them while they're actually having that discussion, and not just text. You can have a web page, you can have, a PDF, you can have a journal article, but it's a way of keeping whatever it is they're commenting on in front of them while they're having that discussion. And sometimes I find that they're not paying attention necessarily to what they've read when they're making the comments, because they're just in the discussion thread, if you know what I mean, that's what they're focused on. So this allows them to see both on the page at the same time, and see very specifically what people are talking about. So when they make their responses or comments, it seems to focus it a little more easily for them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good that you can see individually by student what they've commented on. It might be if you have a reading that's required for a particular discussion on a certain day, that they have to comment in there in order to participate in the conversation. That's something that I've seen in like in some of my MBA courses, that you had to make some notes, but this would be a way to have it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, in a discussion board, the only way to really get them to directly engage the text is, I could say, well, copy and paste what it is you want to copy. But why do that? Use this. Discussion boards are fine for some things, but like you might have a broad question that you have on the discussion board, and then you want them to be a little bit more free thinking and flowing with the information to respond to the question. But if I give them, let's say, a strongly worded op-ed piece from the Wall Street Journal on the Breonna Taylor, the Kentucky grand jury decision. And that piece takes a particular point of view, then they could go in and look at statements there by the editorial board and say, oh, I cannot believe they said that. Like, that's outrageous. And then someone else could say, well, I actually liked very much what they said. I mean, you can get them to really engage the text directly, have a very rich and active discussion, even get some, arguments going.
Great.
Yeah, I like that it brings sort of the benefits of annotation and sort of that slow chat conversation to things that are not typical texts. So in 3 of my classes, we have to deconstruct and analyze existing websites for sort of effective use of user experience design and human-centered design and blah, 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 and that sort of stuff. And so we normally just put them up on the screen in class and discuss them. But of course, they're like of the moment. And, you get your sheepish students who don't really want to contribute on the spot because they feel a little put upon. So I like that this puts it into sort of a longer time frame and allows us to sort of take apart something as sort of multi-layered as an actual website, and putting the prompts in as to what they're looking for in doing the analyzation is pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that it does more than just the text. If it's on the web, you can make use of it and have students annotate it. So applications across disciplines are really available, which I like about it. I think makes it really flexible.
I have a question, Sarah. Is it gated? In other words, do you have to post first before you see somebody else's writing, like in a discussion, so that they're not just sort of copying? Sorry, I've got a cold.
Yeah, no worries. No, it's not gated in that way. In your class or your group chat, once it's there, you can see it. Now, you can turn off your individual ones for other people to see if you want to do that. But I just have it wide open and want them to engage with one another, because that's how I'm kind of using it. Is I want them to do it themselves, but I also want them to work with one another to try and get at the meaning of things, because sometimes they struggle doing Renaissance poetry. They struggle, but having a couple of them work with it seems to help them get at things a little bit more easily.
Well, what you could do is, John, is
Thank you.
maybe what you could do is a little positive reinforcement. The person who comments first and substantively is the one who gets maybe a little extra boost or extra credit point, something like that as well. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Frank. I find that there's an echo chamber. Somebody writes something, it's erroneous, then everyone else writes the same thing, and on it goes.
Yeah, and that's where you can seed you can seed in the annotations yourself, the way that Frank was talking about, to try and help guide them or direct them. So you can put your own annotations in first with questions that you want them to respond to help direct and guide some of that, especially if they're newer to it or younger students, until they get a little more polished.
I like Catherine's comment in the chat about, a way to make sure that they're doing the reading instead of like a reading check or a quiz or something. That would be a huge time saver, because I think we've all been there. We start out not requiring a reading check or a quiz, and then they're not doing the reading, so then we go to that, and it's just cumbersome, and the students don't like it, and this kind of eliminates that.
Yeah, so that's just, how to get hold of me. Thank you for your time. That ends the presentation part, but we can certainly continue the conversation if you like.
I had a couple questions, Sarah. I think this was you who said this, and excuse me if it's not, but you said that you liked it better than Perusal.
I do.
A similar tool. And there's another tool called eMargin that Chris mentioned in his, because just like we'll find out throughout the semester, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. I mean, there's lots of different tools that do similar things. What about Hypothesis do you prefer over Perusal?
One, I like that it's open source, right? So that it's easy to access, it's free. I think the interface is less clunky. I just found, I tried Perusal, and which does integrate with Canvas. But I just found the interface to be kind of clunky in terms of putting in annotations and doing things. And it might have just been that I didn't like the look of it, because sometimes I don't like the way a certain product looks when you're working with it on screen. This one for me looked really good. It was clean, pretty simple. And again, like I said, I like that it's free. I like that they don't keep track of anything. They're not looking for a lot of information, so they're not doing analytic stuff with your materials on it. So the ethos of the company, or the nonprofit that runs it, I like, is another piece of a perusal, a very commercial kind of application.
Yeah, Sarah?
Yes.
The, so when I was looking, I was going to do something, assignment with Hypothesis, and I decided not to because I'm just, I'm like, before I tackle it, I just need to wait before I do it. But I did notice that in Canvas there is an integration for Hypothesis. I mean, sometimes Canvas integrations are just they could say they are there.
Yeah.
You don't really need to have it. But one thing I noticed, I was trying to put a web page in. Sometimes you will get a lot of excess stuff from the ads and stuff like that. So sometimes it might not hurt to copy and paste some of the text yourself, put it on a Word document, and then put in there.
Right, which you can do if you've got files in your Canvas page that you've copied and added or put in there, you can link to them through Hypothesis and it'll pull those up from your Canvas page. So if you want something that's cleaner than a website, you can certainly do it that way. I was looking at both the LMS app integration and then just playing with it without the integration. And quite honestly, I don't think the integration adds anything. That I was able to do everything I needed to do without having it.
I
So
wanted you to see my annotation on the chemistry article.
I'll take a look and see what you've added.
It was all about my complete ignorance on the subject.
Oh, is this the chemistry one?
Yeah. I'm glad that was not assigned to me.
I mean, on the chemistry one, just as an example, you know, I just chose enumerative or something, and then I used the link feature to, I asked the question, what does this mean? And then I answered it myself, but put in a link to a definition, you know, just to show an example of how that might work. But
I mean, we all know that among our students, I mean, there is a significant segment of them that really do struggle with reading comprehension. So, I mean, this is very good for active and collaborative learning where, I mean, students are helping each other understand what's going on. Sometimes they can communicate to each other in ways that we can't communicate with them. So.
Yeah, I mean, is sort of an initial teaching tool is what Jenny was saying early on, that if you say pull up something that you're having your students read or similar to what your students read and then walk them through it, showing them how you annotate or what it is you look for and model that activity, that can be a good way to start teaching them how to engage with text. Because you've all seen students that, you know, literally everything on a page is highlighted. And it's sort of like, well, that's not really effective. There are better ways to do that. And you can certainly model it using this really easily and then have them try their hand at it or work even in, you know, work in groups in some way to do it as well.
I also liked how you used it when we did our workshop activity as well. Some of us were, so I remember engaging Leslie on some point on one of the articles and looking back on that. So, I mean, I think it's good for workshops like with faculty and you know, colleagues or even your colleagues you work, if you're working on a conference paper with them or panels or you're reviewing a paper on you know, for panels, it can be great for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the applications professionally are as good as they are, I think, pedagogically for students.
I have a quick question. Do you ever find yourself with a student who goes in and answers all the questions, and you find that you get the other students who just kind of ride the coattails, so to speak?
You know, once in a while, it depends on the class, I'll say that there, and the students. And once in a while, get someone who just wants to just say, yeah, I agree with that. But that's usually when we have the conversation about what does it mean to engage with your classmates in a conversation. And that, okay, you can agree. Why do you agree? What aspects of it? So I take it as a teaching moment to help them understand that they can't, you know, ride along on someone's coattails, that that's not going to be enough engagement, and sort of go at it that way.
Do you think this could be used? Obviously, you may have already done it with a controversial issue where you have two well-known speakers who have written on the subject, one taking the pro and one taking the con, and then have the students annotate their arguments in written form.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I could see you making use of it for that without any problem.
Because I find that a number of our students struggle with identifying the rationale or the premise from which a person is stating what they're saying. I think that might be a good way that I could use it in a number of courses where I'm dealing with management issues.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those management issues either deal with ADA or they deal with risk management or competency assessment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things you can do is, if you're pre-annotating it, if there are relevant materials you'd like them to take a look at that might help explain a position or an idea, you can always put the links to those in the annotation so that they may read a paragraph, something's referenced, you have something in the page notes of the annotation that allows them to then quickly link out and take a look at it. Or, you know, if you were doing dueling points of view, you could have the annotation, the link go out to the other point of view for that so that you could play them off of one another almost in real time.
Yeah, the ideal for me would be if it was a springboard from the textbook.
Yep. Yeah, and if you've got an online textbook, right, you can use Hypothesis for that.
How, okay, I have a question. How, in some cases, it might be difficult to find a journal article currently online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be behind a paywall. So in many cases, you have to find other means to download a PDF. How could we go about getting that PDF on Hypothesis so that way students could annotate it?
Yeah, you would upload it into your Canvas page in Files, Andrew.
Yeah.
And then once it's uploaded as a file page in Canvas,
yeah,
you can access it through Hypothesis.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well, also you can upload PDFs to Hypothesis. I have a couple in there right now.
Right, you can just directly connect to them that way as well. But it just depends, do you want to keep it all in Canvas or not? And I try and keep it all in Canvas at this point.
So you find it works better with just very small chunks of texts, not like a monograph or.
Well, I put all of Beowulf in it. Yeah, I put all of Beowulf in it for when we were starting with that in the Brit Lit class. And I was having them look for some very particular Old English literary devices throughout the whole text. And so, you know, that was 30, 40 pages, maybe even more than that, that I had them work with. So you can certainly use longer pieces without any problem.
Sarah?
Yes.
Is it just as easy, and is it possible to have a student publish the question for the week or the half of week as it is for the teacher?
It absolutely is. You just give them that assignment and say, your job is to go through the article and you know, see 3 or 4 questions that you want your classmates to respond to. So absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think like current events or something like that, if, they could tie it into the subject that we're studying, this week, find something that's relevant and manage it for us. Okay, thank you.
Jenny's question, would they all need to have the e-textbook to do this? Well, if you provide the link to it on your Canvas page, Jenny, they should be able to link into that once you've posted it to Hypothesis. But we could play around with that and see what the issues might be and if there are any problems. But you should be able to make it available to everyone.
Okay, I was thinking that if they don't have an e-textbook, if they have the, paper version, like how do they get access to the e-version?
Right, and it'd probably be that you'd have to have some sort of access through your Canvas page and then link to that in Hypothesis in your group. And then they should be able to get at it through the group in Hypothesis. But we could play around with that and see.
Okay, so are you thinking I need to scan the text into Canvas?
No, if you have an e-text version of it that's already online or downloaded, you should be able to make that work.
Okay.
Isn't there a guideline as far as the percentage of the text that you're allowed to do that with?
10%.
Yeah,
it's sort of the copyright, that gets us into some of the gray copyright issues for sure. I see Paul sitting there with the antenna going up. But I think it's 10% is usually the guideline I go with.
10% and guideline is the key word. I mean, the thing with copyright law is a lot of these things have never been taken to court, so there's no precedent. But yeah, 10% is a guideline, but that's not stated anywhere. It's just something that people have come to an agreement on, perhaps arbitrarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, 10% is what you always hear.
And doesn't the fact that you're just circulating it among specific people in a class, as opposed to publishing it or hearing it out,
that helps it qualify as fair use, and
Yeah.
it's password protected in a sense because it's on a course Canvas page, and yeah, and you're not making any money off of it, and blah, blah, blah.
better. Thanks.
Great. Well, what I'd like to do is, if any of you want to play around with it and have someone on the other side to see how it works before you deploy it to your class, feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to be your tester or your guinea pig and let you know how things work. My husband is usually my hypothesis tester or guinea pig, but I'm happy to help you out if you want to try something out before you actually do it in a classroom. So that offer stands.
Yeah, I can look at, but however, can they type any equation math type of problem as well? They can answer.
You know what? I would have to look in the text box and see. I saw some symbols there, so it may be possible because you've got your regular keyboard available to you. So if the keys are on your keyboard, you should be able to put it into the annotation box.
Yeah.
May not let you draw things like benzene rings really easily, but.
Okay, well, I think things are winding down a little bit here, so I'm perfectly happy to end a little bit early since it is Friday afternoon. And again, a reminder that next week we will have a speaker, Tristan Click, and she's going to be talking about connections in graphic arts and all sorts of different topics that should stimulate us to think great thoughts. So anyway, I will end the meeting now, and thank you very much, Sarah, for your presentation. This is an example. Sarah was in the first cohort, and we will have other cohort members from previous cohorts give presentations later this semester and next. So thank you, everybody, and we shall see you next Friday.
Hey, Paul,
Thank
Yeah.
y'all.
Thank you.
is the talk face-to-face or could it be face-to-face?
It's, you mean versus Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's Zoom.
Silly question now. Okay, darn. Okay.
Yeah, she lives in Seattle.
Oh,
And all of our speakers are going to be via
Zoom.
Zoom.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a good
Okay.
weekend.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye, baby.